We don't march and protest because we like to march and protest. All we want to do is be free.
Shaun King from New York.
Shaun King, good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if you all watched any of the impeachment hearings yesterday, but Donald Trump is absolutely going to be impeached. Donald Trump has had many horrible weeks during his 3 years in office, but I might go so far to say that this week has been the single worst week for Donald Trump, and that yesterday was probably the worst day of the worst week he's ever had as president. Let me tell you why. Donald Trump and the Republican Party's primary defense is never on the facts. They like to say that the efforts against him are a partisan witch hunt. But yesterday, one of the biggest Trump supporters in the country, Gordon Sondland, testified for nearly 10 hours. Sondland, who is a conservative, rich hotel owner from the Pacific Northwest, gave over $1 million to help fund the Trump inauguration, and in return was made the United States ambassador to the European Union, basically bought that position. That's something that's happened for generations. He's a friend of Trump. Trump enjoys calling everybody who testifies against him a never-Trumper. But Gordon Sondland is the epitome of a Trump supporter. And because of that, people, including myself, had somewhat low expectations for what Gordon Sondland was going to testify to. But the man has clearly lawyered up and was absolutely advised by his attorneys to spill the beans yesterday, because straight out of the gate, Gordon Sondland, like Tekashi 6ix9ine, named every name, told every story, and made it clear that he was not going to be the fall guy for the Trump administration. If you're not clear, Democrats are holding impeachment hearings because Donald Trump illegally withheld nearly $500 million of emergency aid to Ukraine that had already been approved and allocated by Congress. Trump was withholding that aid until their president announced that he was going to launch an investigation into one of Trump's political rivals, Joe Biden. It's a form of extortion. It's bribery. And it's gross. It's an unethical abuse of power. Well, for months, leading Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham and others, have said that evidence of a quid pro quo, if evidence of a quid pro quo was ever produced, that would be damaging in their eyes. But they didn't believe any such evidence existed. Well, yesterday in his opening statement, Gordon Sondland said that Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was working on Trump himself and indeed put forth a quid pro quo. Sondland testified to that with those words, saying that Trump would not meet with the Ukrainian government and would not release their aid until President Zelensky of Ukraine literally went to a microphone and announced that he was investigating Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden. This went on first for a few weeks this past summer, then for a few months. Mind you, that foreign aid had already been approved and was supposed to be in the hands of another government who was fighting a war with Russia, another reason Trump is likely to have delayed it. But Sondland not only testified to the quid pro quo, which just means I'll only give you something if you give me something. Sondland testified of every single White House staffer and cabinet member who knew all about this quid pro quo and said and did nothing to stop it. It was so explosive that I heard rumors yesterday that several Democrats in the House were considering even going ahead and holding a floor vote right then and there or impeaching Donald Trump even right there in that moment. As Republicans continue to blather on about the identity of the whistleblower, what's clear is that it doesn't matter who the whistleblower is at this point. The testimony against Donald Trump, not just from Gordon Sondland, but from another Trump staffer, Timothy Morrison, 2 days ago, and so many others, is absolutely damning. The new Republican defense is that what Trump did is not a crime because it didn't actually work. President Zelensky never came forward and made the announcement that he was investigating the Bidens. In essence, they're saying that attempted robbery is not a crime since the robbery didn't actually work. But of course it is. So they've kind of pivoted even a little more, and they're saying, well, this wasn't even an attempted robbery. It was just a plan that never got off the ground. But the criminal code even has a word for that. It's conspiracy to commit a crime. Either way, Trump abused his office for months on end, all in the name of trying to nail Joe Biden. That's all it was about. And I'll close with this thought. Gordon Sondland, he said one more thing yesterday that I think really nailed Trump to the wall. Trump and his supporters have been telling the lie that Trump really cares about corruption and that he was only asking them to do this investigation because he cares so much about corruption. But Sondland testified yesterday that Trump didn't actually care if Ukraine ever really investigated the Bidens. He didn't care if the investigation ever actually happened. He didn't care about the corruption. He just wanted them to announce that there was going to be an investigation. It was all an elaborate PR hoax from Trump, and now it's really coming back to bite him. And I think we're now probably just days or maybe weeks away before Trump is impeached in the House. And the only struggle I have with this is the timing, but it's certainly taking away a whole lot of attention from the Democratic primaries, the Democratic debates last night, and more. But I think the impeachment is going to be the main news of the day, probably for the rest of 2019. Take care, everybody.
And what did you think about the debates last night?
Man, I watched them, and I've watched all the debates up until this point. I thought they were pretty boring, and I don't think it was because there was anything different about them. I think after you've seen 5 debates, they've kind of all given the same answers. Like, it was pretty predictable. And, I'll say what I told you earlier. At this point, I think the debates can only do harm. Like, if you go to the debate and you crush it, like Julian Castro, I think, has done well at every debate. But he didn't even make it to the debate last night. He didn't make it to the stage, yeah. And so doing well at the debate doesn't seem to help you much, but getting there and getting slammed, like Tulsi Gabbard had a horrible night last night. I thought Joe Biden had a horrible night last night. So the debates can hurt you, but they don't help you very much, even if you nail it.
I think I agree with you. I think if you haven't made your decision, but part of the problem, Shaun, and that was a discussion I had last night with one friend, which led to a number of phone calls during the debate, and people who are not watching, and they just want it to be over with.
Yeah.
They want it. Yeah. They want just. And one person said, just pick somebody so we can support him. And I'm like, what about the issues? What about these people? Yeah. Don't just throw it away to somebody. What issue really hits you? What strikes you? What blows you up? And so then go with that person, but get involved. Don't just wait for the decision to be made by somebody else.
We can't do that, because here's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that a guy like Mayor Pete is going to end up winning these super white states like Iowa and New Hampshire,
exactly,
and go into these other states with a lot of momentum.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, listen, it matters. And I also agree with Julian Castro, who's been saying this as loudly as he could for the past few weeks. Iowa and New Hampshire should not be the first states in the Democratic primary. They just shouldn't.
And people have been saying that, and yet they go, yeah, that's something to think about, and they don't do anything about it.
That's right. The Democratic Party needs to change that for sure.
Well, all right.
Yeah, take care, y'all.
Thank